Hello Animorphs fans and welcome to another episode of AniLysis. And today we're investigating this book, Animorphs Visser. And a particular character, his name is Essam 293. Now, if the name doesn't give it away, he's a Yeerk. And quite a prominent one in this story, but he's only featured in this story, so it's the only book we'll be looking at quotes from. And you can imagine that that's sort of what it looks like. You know, there's not much variety in Yeerks, you know, they all look the same, and that's not being racist. The context of Essam's introduction to the book. It starts with Idris, and she is a sub-visser at the time, and she's been tasked with finding a Class 5 alien race. And she finds one, but then her superiors are like, nah, you ain't doing that. Nah, you're going to the Taxon homeworld, you're being a Taxon for a while, fuck you. But Idris is like, well, fuck you right back, yes. In fact, double fuck you. And then she decides, okay, I'm just going to do my own thing and go to Earth, but I can't go on my own, so I'm going to take my most trusted subordinate, and that happens to be Essam 293. So let's look at a couple of the quotes. Firstly, establishing his name and how he got introduced in this context, yada yada yada. I received this information of a new species, a possible Class 5 species. My assignment was to validate and evaluate the data. And I was told that I was to be transferred. My new post would be anti-insurgent work on the Taxon homeworld. I would be given a new host body, a Taxon. As a loyal Yeerk, I had to defy my treasonous orders, and so I did. I enlisted a subordinate, Essam 293, a fellow Hawk-Bajir controller, and took a scout ship and set off alone through zero space in search of Earth. Does the name Essam mean anything to you? Yes, Essam 293 of the Sulpniar pool. A few things of note there. He is another one of the Yeerks from the Sulpniar pool. There are a couple more, and I forget which ones. I believe it's Inis 226, I could be wrong. But that's one of the main pools that we know about. So Essam 293 comes from the Sulpniar pool. And at the time that this starts, he is in a Hawk-Bajir host, as is Idris. So he goes on a scout ship with Idris to find this Class 5 race. And they do eventually find it, and that is Earth. So before we get into the main plot points that Essam is involved in, let's discuss Essam's personality. There's a reason that Idris chose Essam 293 as the subordinate to go along with Idris. As we'll find out in the quotes, he used to be a sub-visser much like Idris, but he got demoted, and the reason for that is because he was a bit of a pushover. Who the bloody hell was that? Hey Fluffer, what are you doing? You're disrupting my video, I hope you're bloody happy. He let a bunch of Hawk-Bajir hosts go away. He just let them go. And we'll see how in the quotes. But he was demoted because of that. The thing about him that Idris likes is that he doesn't stray from orders. He's too soft as well. Which is slightly contradictory, so he let a bunch of hosts go, but he also sticks to orders. Now that could be a personality trait that came about because of his demotion. So he might have been a bit rough and tumble, you know, broke the rules a few times, or just didn't follow instructions very well. And he got demoted for it, probably threatened, because we know how the Yeerks tend to operate. So he probably changed his tune after that and became very much, right, I need to follow my orders, do what I'm told, don't push the apple cart, just do as I'm told, and that's that. Because that seems to be the reason that Idris chose him. He's also a warrior. And these are the quotes that back that up, as well as some other personality traits. Let's look at them now. Don't worry so much, Essam. If we have to kill your host, we'll soon find you a replacement. He nodded his Hawk-Bajir head. He knew I was lying. By now, Essam had figured out that I was on an unauthorized mission. If things went badly, he would be blamed, same as me. Even if things went well, he might not be given a new host anytime soon. None might be available. And of course, he had to consider the possibility that I would simply kill him to simplify my life and stretch my supplies. But Essam was no fool. He knew better than to challenge me openly. I had chosen him carefully. He was a Yeerk of narrow expertise, a pilot and technician. He had at one point risen to the rank of sub-visor, but he had suffered demotion for an incident of poor judgment. While on patrol, he had allowed a handful of Hork-Bajir to escape aboard a neutral Des Badine ship. A Yeerk who failed to understand that diplomatic niceties like neutrality were nonsense was unfit for command. I had sensed this peculiar weakness in Essam, this confusion of purpose, this lack of serious ambition. That made him perfect for my purposes. I needed a competent servant, not a competitor. You worry too much, Essam. Sub-Visor, please come down here, Essam called. It's not safe out there. No, it definitely isn't, Essam, I said with a laugh. Sub-Visor, the engines are down, but I can raise our protective force field, but you have to come inside. Not yet, Essam, not yet. Essam shook the large head of his host, already beginning to adopt human characteristics, as a good Yeerk should do when in a host. So let's just skip over the contradiction of he nodded his head as a Hork-Bajir and then shook his head as a human, and that was him adopting human characteristics. Okay, book. Let's just gloss over that. So he is, yeah, a bit soft, and he was demoted for it, and he probably doesn't want to step out of line anymore. So Idris sees this and thinks, okay, he's not going to betray me. Firstly, he knows that I'll probably just end up killing him because he is too soft and he probably wouldn't do it to me. Yeah, that's why I'm going to use Essam. But they do have a good understanding, Idris and Essam. They don't fall out, they don't seem to dislike each other, they get along quite well. And Idris knows that Essam has some useful skills, so another reason he took Essam along on this journey was that he was a pilot and technician. Now if you're going on a ship with just 2 crew, they're going to need those skills. And Essam does all of the piloting. And they get to Earth, and Essam lands them down there, where they find their first human hosts. They first go into the Middle East, I believe in the Gulf War, and they take a host, or Essam grabs a guy who's lost this fight, takes him and allows Idris to take this human as a host. So at this point it's only Idris who's taken a host. And then they decide, okay, he thinks America's the bee's knees, right? So they go to America and they find a couple in California. Typical Californians, they're all drugged up and have barely 2 brain cells to rub between them. And they proceed to take those 2 as hosts. And Essam takes the bloke and Idris takes the female. Now here are the quotes to back this up. A second human emerged from the building, a male, shorter than the female, also thicker, and partially covered with thin, curly fur. The male was larger and more powerful, but he was also slower in his movements, less agile. Older, I concluded. Perhaps near death. Essam moved swiftly. He grabbed the female and held her as he had held the lost soldier in the desert. I went to the female and swiftly, easily now that I had experience, took control of her. A few minutes later, Essam took the man. Thus I became female, and Essam became male. And when the cops arrived, they found nothing suspicious. Our 2 Hork-Bajir hosts disappeared, their atoms scattered in the atmosphere of Earth by our Dracon beams. We had, in the human expression, burned our bridges. This host is aware of many human weaknesses and exploits them for his own purposes. People want to laugh, for example. They want to escape from the realities of their lives and imagine themselves in unlikely situations. They are suckers for a lot of teeth and long legs. My host has become successful among humans by creating entertainment devised to cause laughter among humans. Essam and I had made hosts of Lowenstein and Jenny Lines. They were useful for learning more about the humans. Lowenstein was a television producer. So Essam inhabits the host body of a chap called Lowenstein, or Lowenstein. And he's a television producer, big bizzo sort of guy. And Jenny Lines, who Idris has, is just essentially his female. So they go on with that for a while, and then they figure out these 2 are a bit rubbish, and we need some new hosts. So they do end up getting new hosts, and those are Alison Kim and Hildy Gervais, the 2 hosts that they stay with for the longest time in this book. And Hildy Gervais actually turns up in the trial. Now, there is a trial going on in the background to all that's going on in this book, because this is a not so much a flashback, but a memory. And the purpose of this book is this trial between Visser 1 and Visser 3, Idris and Esplin. And during this trial, the Council of 13 and Visser 3 bring in Hildy Gervais, who at this point is just known as Spacey the Hobo. And he has vague memories of Essam and Idris. So let's look at how the quotes that show that they changed hosts and moved in with Alison Kim and Hildy Gervais into Lowenstein's home. So they're in this big Californian hillside home, like Beverly Hills or what have you. They move in there with Hildy Gervais and Alison Kim to carry on. Yes, Council Member Garoff, it is true that I took a human female named Alison Kim as a host. Essam took a host named Hildy Gervais. Essam had found and taken the human Hildy Gervais. He was often away, passing as a true human. He was gaining tremendous experience, insight, and I got the impression that he enjoyed his human occupation. I walked to the balcony and looked out over the water. Malibu. Alison Kim could never have afforded this place, of course, but Essam and I had emptied Lowenstein's bank accounts before vaporizing him. I don't think it was made clear what Hildy Gervais's job was, but the point of taking Alison Kim and Hildy Gervais was just to learn a bit more about human society, to sort of ingrain themselves in amongst the humans, because the whole point of Idris doing this is because she wants to figure out the best way to invade the Earth and take humans as the host. They want as many hosts as possible. So that is what they're doing. But in the midst of all of this, while being on Earth, it turns out that Essam as Hildy Gervais and Idris as Alison Kim fall in love. They fall in love. And whether it's genuine or not, it's difficult to say, but there is some genuineness about it, and a couple of the quotes upcoming will explain that. But this comes up in the trial, and Visser 3 points to it as, aha, she was feeling sympathy or empathy or whatever for the human race. Therefore, dereliction of duty, she had no intention of fulfilling her duty, and she had kids. In the trial, this is given to the Council of 13 by asking Spacey about his relationship with Essam. And this is how those quotes go. Nevertheless, you and Essam became, what is the word? You became friends? He nodded. Much as a human can be with a Yeerk. We talked, me and him. We were together for a long while. Visser 3 nodded. In fact, you were his host for a year, were you not? And while you were his host, did you know another Yeerk who had the name of Idris 562 and the rank of Subvisor 409? Oh yes, I remember her, the human said. See, she was Essam's wife. He was in love with her. Visser 3 lowered his thought-speak voice to an insinuating whisper. And she, this Alison Kim, this Idris 562, this Subvisor 409, she was in love with him as well? Yes, yes, Essam was sure of that. Mostly, anyway. See, if he hadn't been sure, he'd never have gone ahead with it. With what? The babies, their kids. See, they had kids. Twins, a little boy and a little girl. At this point, Garoff, the head honcho, or who appears to be the head honcho of this Council of 13 operation, this trial, decides, okay, I need to actually get more in depth with this, and goes, I forget the name of the process, we'll cover it in another analysis eventually, but he goes into Idris's memories and watches these memories as they unfurl. And he sees some things going on between these four people. Essam, Idris, Hildy and Alison Kim. It's a bit of a muddle between them. It's a strange old foursome. Yes, yes, yes. No dirty things though. This is a young adult book. Right, so let's look at the quotes of Garoff seeing these things unfold. Right now, in this memory, you're worried about Essam. You want him to come home from his work. Why? Why? I miss him. More than that, I see it clearly in your memory, although you never admitted it. Your host finds Essam's host attractive. The ball flew. A man on the other team slammed it back. Hildy ran for it. I ran for it, slipped, fell in the sand. Hildy fell on top of me. Face to face, sudden silence. All the world outside was moving in slow motion. I looked into his eyes, knew that those eyes were being aimed by Essam, but knew too that Allison was looking at Hildy. Yeerk looking at Yeerk, human looking at human. None breathing, no heart beating. What are we going to do? Hildy/Essam whispered. I didn't know. I don't know. Allison, the shipboard Kandrona generators cannot last much longer. We will need to replenish our supplies if we are to survive. I discovered I was crying when a tear dropped onto my son's face. I love you, Idris, Essam himself said. And I love these small humans, our children. Essam and Hildy conferred within their shared brain. Then he said, one thing we swear, the four of us, the children, will survive. I went home from that contact elated and found Essam Hildy caring for the children. I told him, casually, that a new Kandrona was on the way. He became irrational, emotional. What was the cause of his irrationality? Garoth asked. He said I should not have contacted the Empire. We could, according to him, fly our ship back to Yeerk space, invent some story of being lost, and obtain a new Kandrona generator before returning to Earth. He'd wanted to talk to me about it. He was angry that I'd gone, on my own, to make contact. So they've got these kids now, and Essam is falling in love with being human. And Idris, being the the strange creature that she is, decides that no, her duty comes first, and this is where Essam and Idris start to separate. He wants to stay there. Idris wants to contact the Empire and does so. Contacts the Empire asking for more supplies because Essam knows that because they still got the ship elsewhere, keeping them going because of course they need the Kandrona stuff. And Essam says we're running out. We can't carry on like this. Idris says I've contacted them. Now when she explains this to the Council of 13 during the trial, she messes around with the details in a bit to make herself look a bit more sympathetic and make it look as if Essam is being confrontational and making Idris do stuff or demanding that she do stuff to twist her arm a bit. So, and taking the kids, because it's quite a complex little storyline in here. And at first when I read it, I didn't understand it. I understand it a bit more now, but I wrote these notes a couple of weeks ago now, so it's starting to disappear from my memory again. But yeah, it's a big family thing. It's a big sitcom drama. Not sitcom, soap opera drama, that's what it's more like. Because Essam loves these kids, genuinely loves these kids. And that's where things for him come to a conclusion. My emotional sympathies did not obscure my duty. I knew where that lay. I knew that this Class 5 species was a vital natural resource. I assumed that Essam would see all that too. I did not see that Essam was weaker than I. We all know that Essam had risen at one point in his career to sub-Rissa rank and had been demoted for improper behaviour. Specifically, a lack of vigour. A lack of firmness. I thought Essam understood and agreed with me. I was wrong. Where are you going, Essam? I demanded. Don't worry. I'll leave you the Kandrona, he said. I won't starve you. I actually thought I loved you. And for that, I'll not hurt you now. What are you babbling about? I've just fed. I'll last 3 days. I'll release Hildy at that point. He'll be safe with the children by then. You think you're leaving? I cried. Yes, Allison. I am Sub-Vissa 409, not Allison, I roared. Yes, Sub-Vissa, Essam said. But I'm no longer a member of the Empire. I have chosen death over a continuation of this despicable mission. I was in a rage. Betrayed. Betrayed by my own. By my subordinate. By Hildy. By Essam. Betrayed. I ran for the hidden panel where we concealed the weapons. I reached in, grabbed one of the Dracon weapons, turned and levelled it at Essam. Obey me or die now, I snapped. If you fire, you may hit the children. Do you think I care? Obey me. I am your Sub-Vissa. He put the children down and moved away from them. Kill me then, Idris. I ordered my finger to squeeze the trigger, but at that moment my host rose up against me. She had lain in wait, biding her time, lulling me into a false sense of security. She attacked with all the force of mind she possessed. Naturally, I regained control within seconds, but in those few seconds, Essam leapt and snatched the Dracon beam away from me. Essam was larger than me, stronger, being in a male human host. He held me prisoner. He knew my feeding schedule. He held me against my will, waiting till I was starving. At last I had no choice. I prepared to enter our temporary pool. The children will need their mother, Essam said. I am their mother, I cried. A lie, of course, but I hoped to manipulate him. No, Alison Kim is their mother. You? You are no one's mother. You never could be. You've gone human, you fool. He smiled. Yes, I have gone human, Subvisor. He was troubled. He was reluctant. But at the end he agreed to lock my alternate host onto the poolside restraints. He brought me the second host, attached him using the restraining devices Essam himself had built, and left. I immediately entered this host and went in search of Essam and Alison Kim and the children. This is the story that Idris told the Council of 13 in the trial. It's close to accurate in some ways, but it's not entirely accurate, and we'll cover the quotes in a little bit to cover that. But in the meantime, what were they doing at this point in the invasion? Idris was setting up the sharing. And one of the things that happened during that is that they got the first sharing host. So they beat someone down, not mentally, not physically, to the point where they would accept an alien slug in their ear. And that happened to be Essam, because he'd lost a bet with Idris. So the first victim of the sharing was infested by Essam. At first, Essam didn't really think that this technique would work, that you could just convince a human to give away their freedom. But Idris has been in Jenny Lyons, who basically did that, basically sold herself to Lowenstein. So Idris had a better idea of this, and so we get this scene at the sharing of Idris considering why Essam couldn't understand that at first, and then Essam taking that first host and essentially figuring it out for himself. That was what Essam, who had infested only Lowenstein and Hildy, would not credit, that humans would surrender their freedom in exchange for empty words. But I infested the lost soldier, and the even more lost Jenny Lyons. I had tasted human defeat and superstition and weakness. Essam had left his host, agreeing to help me with this experiment. Poor Essam, he thought he would win the bet. I raised Essam from a small jar, half filled with water. I held him in my hand. Rich, I said, this is a Yeerk. To become a member of the inner sharing, you must allow me to put him in your ear. He will enter your brain. He will take over your life. He was nervous, afraid. But then I'm in, right? Then I'm in the inner sharing, right? Right. Okay then. Yeah, let's do it. We did it. Essam found himself looking out through Huntley's eyes at me. You win, Subvisor, he said. I was generous in victory. We win, Essam. All Yeerks win. And humans lose. And now we get the real story of what happens to end Essam and Idris's relationship. And it's not too dissimilar to what we heard before, what Idris said to the council. But that was more her wanting to go out there and finish off Essam and to hell with the kids. The real story is a bit different. Let's look at the quote. I contacted the Empire. Essam knew that I had contacted the Empire, and he agreed. That was not the point where Essam and I parted ways. I misled the council on that one. I couldn't tell them that I had every intention of first keeping the children. The rupture between Essam and me came weeks later, when it became increasingly clear to me that I no longer had any use for Alison Kim. I needed to spend all my time now as Lord David Altman, spiritual guide of the sharing. What will you do with Alison? Essam asked. What do you mean, what will I do? We will have to kill her and destroy the body. And while we're at it, we'll need to erase Hildy Gervais as well. Hildy is tied to Alison, and it will be better if it seems that we both have simply moved away. You would kill the mother and father of these children? Essam, we have no choice. Our new hosts will simply adopt the orphan children. They're young. The children will be fine. I was too caught up in my own visions of power to spot the warning signs. The rest of what I'd told the council was true, or mostly true. Essam had overpowered me, starved me till I left Alison Kim. He had left me with access to Lord David Altman. I did go in search of Essam, but not to kill him. He had my children. I wanted them back. I still wanted them back. So the split comes because Essam loves this human family. Idris doesn't really give a damn about the two hosts that they originally took and just thinks, oh, sod them, we've got more important things to worry about. But still wants these kids. Still has this sentimental thing towards these kids. But there's that disagreement, and Essam has had enough with the Yeerk Empire. He's had enough with it, because what sort of life is it? He's got a human life now, he's got a family, and he cares about that. They've pretty much disowned the Yeerk Empire at this point anyway. But Idris wants it back, because Idris has found a way to infiltrate human society through the sharing, through people like Rich Huntley that we just read about. So she knows the way to do that, to bring success. But Essam isn't ambitious, doesn't want the success. We learnt about that from his character earlier. And that's the oversight that Idris had. That lack of ambition. That when he eventually would settle down, he would have no need to go back to the Yeerk Empire to see some military success. And that is where the two eventually split. And true to his word, Essam is dying of starvation. Idris eventually finds him. I went after them, I said. I chased them. It was not easy. Essam was no fool. Alison was surely no fool. And Hildy had lived an interesting life. He knew the places a human could hide. Nevertheless, I found them. The twins were sick, both with high fevers. Alison and Essam took them to a doctor. The doctor admitted them to a hospital, and their names popped up in a computer search. I was there very quickly. 3 days had passed. I knew Essam would be starving. I hoped to use the presence of the Kandrona to torture him. Starvation is so much more painful when salvation is near. I found Essam starving. Hildy, never the most emotionally stable of humans, was cracking under the strain of experiencing Essam's pain. I approached Essam, took him by surprise in a stairwell of the hospital. He attacked me, but I was armed. Go ahead, kill me. I'm already dead, he cried. Why are the twins here? What? Do you actually pretend to care? He mocked. They have a virus, a resistant strain of some sort. If I had the ship, if I had access to the ship's computer, I could synthesize an antiviral. He staggered. He had lost control of his host for a moment. He was weakening swiftly. You betrayed me, and you betrayed your race, I said. Your race is sick. Sick and twisted and evil. It was Hildy talking, on his own, uncontrolled. I'm dying, Essam again. Dying. Don't hurt the kids. You can't. He collapsed suddenly, utterly. It was as if every tendon in his body had been cut at the same moment. He lay there, breathing but little else. I reached down and turned his head. Left ear, right ear. Essam was trying to emerge from the right ear. He was halfway out, escaping the host in the moment of death, as instinct tells us to do. I grabbed and pulled him the rest of the way, but he was still more attached than I'd thought. I suppose death had already reached part of his body. I held half a Yeerk in my hand. He moved very little, and then he stopped moving altogether. I put him into my pocket. Hildy woke slowly, but he was not the same human. Bits of Essam still stuck to his brain. Dead nerve endings were tied into his. Some of his neurons fired through dead Yeerk tissue. So that's how Essam meets his rather grisly end. Half of him still stuck inside Hildy Gervais's head, who then becomes Spacey, the homeless guy, who's a bit mad, Big surprise there. And ends up being used in this trial against Idris. Sort of a revenge thing, but it doesn't pay off because, of course, the book Visser, which I've forgotten to put back on the screen here. Silly mate. Because this book Visser could never be fucked to actually make anything of its plot lines. If it did, maybe we'd have a more interesting end to Essam's story, but it was a bit anticlimactic. However, Essam's story is, I think, one of the better ones in the Animorphs series. For a character who was only in the one book, this character who was fully devoted to his superior, who showed no ambition, but it was that same lack of ambition that caused him to betray his loyalties to the Yeerk Empire, because he found his family, he wanted to settle down, and he was too soft. He wouldn't allow Idris to kill Hildy Gervais and Alison Kim because he'd fallen in love with them. It was a weird love triangle. Whereas Idris was a bit more stone cold. That's where they split, and that's why she killed him. They were in love, but that love died. Sad, isn't it? Great story, everyone. It is actually a really good story. Yeah, it's just a shame that that thing didn't finish it off properly. Bastard. One of the main things about Essam, which is a great character point, and we know that some Yeerks, you know, they can be good. We got the whole Yeerk peace movement, but Essam was really the first time where we find that Yeerks can experience love, which, were there any other Yeerks that had that going for them? If there was, it was, I can't remember, but Essam was the one, the Yeerk who fell in love and paid the price for it. A tragic tale and a great character. I really do like Essam 293. If you have anything that I've missed, please do let me know and I shall put it on an addendum to the end of this video. I've done it for the Animorph video and the Dragonfly video. And you can go check them out. I know that I'm looking at the statistics, nobody has, but that's understandable. A few minor points. It's just for completionist's sake, just so that we get all the information out there. But I hope this covers everything for Essam 239. Great character, and I hope you agree. Hello, Fluffer. Fluffer agrees. Hey, you. So thank you very much for watching. The next one will be on Cassie. In the meantime, happy November. It's not yet Halloween as the moment of recording this, but by the time it goes up, it will be past it. So I hope you had a good one, and I hope you were scared witless, especially by my Halloween special. Thank you very much for watching. I shall see you next time. Ta-ra.